Do you remember the bygone days when you would get a phone call and it would go something like this? We're expanding our firm over the next year and a half or so, and we're going to send you a letter to ask you for information such as the inventory of workers in your region, the land, the infrastructure, and wages for some particular occupations. You don't get that call today. In fact, you may never know that you were shortlisted. So it's more important than ever before to know what's in your labor market. So I'm going to ask you to go on a journey with me. You get that phone call from Cecil CEO. He's coming to your airport tomorrow. Yikes, you think. Can I be ready in one day for Cecil? The only thing that you know is it's a paint coating manufacturing plant, and he expects to hire 325 people. All kind of things are going through your head, but you think you can get the right people together by tomorrow. So you call Wanda Workforce, and she says that she can be there in your conference room tomorrow. Ernie, the educator, can be there as well to talk about his work with the higher education in the region and the pipeline. And of course, Carl Corporate Real Estate says he can drive out to the airport with you to pitch the building that his firm is brokering. So the first thing you do is bring in Ricky, the researcher, to talk to him about what the potential competition looks like. And he pulls open this tool that you regularly use that looks at certain factors that site selectors and expanding firms usually consider. Things like the labor availability, the training pipeline, the location quotient, and how concentrated that particular industry is in the region, and the supply chain. And this is set up on a star system so that you could change it to increase or decrease the importance of that as you look at particular sites around the nation. Given Cecil's importance of labor availability, we decide to leave it on the default, where labor availability has 5 stars. So Ricky puts in a paint coatings firm with 325 people, and up pops the United States chart with the darkest green area showing the best locations to locate that paint manufacturing firm, and the red showing the worst. Now, you're a little bit disappointed when you see the top 4 potential competitors and you're not there, you being the Greensboro region. And when we look at these rows charts, it's clear because of the green, large green wedges that at least 3 of the potential competitors have very high location quotients. In other words, they have the supplier relationships and the trainers for chemical industries, paint coating is already in the region. They also have pretty good labor based on the LAB labor wedge that's showing up as pretty high. So now we switch to the decision matrix, and when we do that, we're happy to see that Greensboro is number 6. And now we start to see some things that are popping out to us that we need to talk about in the pitch when Cecil comes tomorrow. First of all, labor availability is not 100% in our region. In Greensboro, it's 87%, meaning again that Cecil is probably not going to find all the workers he needs in every skill that he needs when he comes tomorrow. Chicago is 100%. That's a very large area, so if he were to go there, he'd find ample workers. Houston is pretty big at 99% for paint coatings. When we look at payroll, though, we're encouraged that the payroll is much lower in the Greensboro area than it is in some of our other competitors. And a reason for that is the cost of living. It's the lowest of any of the competitors. Cost of living is 100% in the US, so anything below 100 indicates that our region has a lower cost of living. And finally, unionization is very low. It's the lowest of any of the competitors. So now the next day is here. We go out to the airport, we're excited, a little bit nervous, ready to meet Cecil. He's a straight shooter. He says to us, my researchers told us that you're within the top 10, but they're concerned about the labor availability. So we drive him out to the site, and as we're driving out there, we remain upbeat. Carl Corporate Real Estate does a great job of selling the Park Road site. He says it's exactly what he needs. So as we're driving back to the conference room, we start to prepare him for the data that he's going to see. So Cecil, we like to make sure that if a firm is going to move into our region, they're going to find the workers that they need. So we're very careful about how we define the labor shed. And what I mean by that is the area in which you're going to draw your workers, or the area from which you're going to draw your workers. And if you were to locate at the Park Road location and just use the MSA as your labor shed, you would be understating the number of workers you need. It's basically 3 counties that look rectangular and stacked upon each other. It's 2,000 square miles. Plenty of people live in this area, but again, we expect that would understate your needs. Several years ago, it used to be that site selectors and expanding firms would ask us to give them a mile drive radius around the site. And when we do that, we overstate the number of workers because we're not taking into account the fact that you've got mountains, you've got lakes, you've got lack of highways. And so we found with the latest technology, we can do an actual drive time around your specific site. And when we do that, you can see that the highways make a difference in terms of where the workers come from. And we want to make sure, for example, that we're taking into account workers that would be driving down from Danville, Virginia, just on the outside of the state of North Carolina. When we get to the conference room, we'll give you more data on this. So now, back in the conference room, after introductions and everyone gets settled, you start your pitch. Cecil, as we were talking about in the car, if we use the MSA, since you're a paint coatings firm, I know you're going to need mixing blending machine setters. If you use the MSA, it's going to indicate that we have 656 people here with that type of skill. If we go to the 45-mile radius, it's going to show that you have 1,506 workers that you can draw. And we know that that's too large based on the terrain in this region. If we go with the 45-minute drive time, that's the most accurate. It will give you about 1,022 people. So now that we've defined the labor shed, let's go on and look at the other occupations that potentially you'll need and see if we have the workers for you. So we use an industry to occupation matrix to look at the occupations. If we were to use the BLS occupation survey numbers, they're usually about 2 years old. Using this industry to occupation matrix, it gives us data that are maybe 3 to 6 months old. Cecil looks at it and says, yeah, that looks about right in terms of what I'll be looking for. At the top, you see a firm with 325 workers on average would need 53 mixing blending machine setters, the packagers, and the chemical tenders you see below that. So now when we look at what the region has to offer, you can see that we have 983 people in our 45-minute drive time that are mixing blending machine setters, 39 unemployed, and you can see that with the packaging tenders, many more of them, as well as the chemical equipment operators. Seems like we have plenty of people here in the region to fill those jobs. But when we look at the potential candidate to opening ratio, we're a little bit concerned. And the reason is that when we've worked with site selectors or expanding firms, they've told us that they like to see 50 people employed or unemployed for every one that they're going to hire. So as you can see, we don't have that ratio with the mixing blending machine setters. So with that, Wanda Workforce comes to the podium and says, Cecil, we don't have enough workers in the mixing blending machine setters. However, we have over 1,000 people within our region that have skills similar to that occupation that are transferable. And you may wonder how we know this. Well, the BLS surveys firms every year, and they ask them things about occupations such as, what are the abilities? What are the job description? What is the knowledge of those particular occupations? We're able to use that data to then look at other occupations and see which are most transferable. So Cecil, as the Director of Workforce, let me assure you that I'll do everything that I can within the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, we call it WIOA, to make sure that you have the workers you need and to get them up to speed and trained for your jobs. And then secondly, here in North Carolina, we have an initiative to try to retain veterans and military people who are exiting. Here you can see some military exits from the past year, and there are over 100 of them that left and are residing now in North Carolina. We get this information from the Department of Defense, and these are people that are hardworking, that are trainable, are disciplined, and will be great workers for your plant. So with that, she hands the baton to Ernie the educator. Ernie steps up and says, Cecil, we play an integral role in the community with both existing firms and expanding firms in 3 main ways. First of all, we provide the curriculum you need for in-demand occupations, and if we don't have that curriculum, we add it if needed. You'll be needing chemists, I'm sure, because of the paint coating manufacturing firm, and we have 9 higher ed institutions in this region that graduate people for the pipeline. And also, this past year, we graduated 51 chemists, so I'm sure that would help with some of the lack of chemists that you may see in our region. And then secondly, we look at job postings to know what kind of occupations you're trying to fill. And in this day and age where we have high costs to go to school and we have high default rates on loans, we look at certifications to see what sort of training, what real-world training can we put together that will prepare our residents for jobs at your plant. And then thirdly, data will only take you so far. So every year we have a meeting where we invite about 100 people, manufacturers and healthcare workers, firms from the region. We give them a presentation about what we see the economy doing, occupations. Then they get together into clusters, say the healthcare cluster group and the advanced manufacturing group, and they talk about their needs. We come back together and review it. And over the past few years, it seems soft skills are always coming up as a need that we need to teach. And then secondly, the last couple of years, cyber has been bubbling up, and so we've added that curriculum to our offerings in some of the higher ed institutions in the region. So now, back to the final pitch. Cecil, you asked us to give you an understanding of the skills and the workers you would find in our region if they would meet your needs. We defined for you a labor shed that will give you the workers that you can count on. For the most part, we do have the workers you need. Where we don't, we can fill them with the pipeline, with transferable skills, and with military people that are coming to the region. Also, our region has a low cost of living. That means that your plant wages overall will be low, and we have low unionization. We're a business-friendly community that would love to have you as part of our growth as we continue throughout the decade. So, audience, what's in your labor market?